What if I told you that for a few magical minutes, the king of rock and roll lived again, not in Memphis, not in a tribute show in Las Vegas, but on the stage of America's Got Talent? Through the voice of a shy Filipino boy whose dream was bigger than his fear. And what happened next left Simon Cowell smiling in a way no one expected. Stay with me until the end, because this is more than a performance story. It's about courage, family, and the power of believing when no one else does. And if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because the next life-changing moment might be just one story away. His name was Miguel Santos, a 12-year-old boy from a small coastal town in the Philippines. He wasn't the loudest kid in school. He wasn't the tallest or the most popular. He was the quiet one who sat near the window, humming old songs while the other kids talked about video games and basketball. Most people his age were listening to modern pop stars. Miguel was listening to Elvis Presley. His love for Elvis began with his grandfather, Lolo Ramon. Every Sunday afternoon, when the heat wrapped around their tiny home like a heavy blanket, Lolo would take out an old, slightly scratched vinyl record. The record player crackled before the music started. Then that voice, deep, warm, powerful, filled the room. Miguel would sit cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide, as Can't Help Falling in Love drifted through the air. Listen carefully, Lolo would say, tapping his cane gently. Elvis doesn't just sing. He feels. Miguel listened. He didn't just memorize lyrics, he studied the emotion, the pauses, the way Elvis held a note like it was the most important word in the world. Over time, Miguel began to sing along. At first softly. Then louder. Then with confidence. But confidence at home is different from confidence in the world. When Miguel told his classmates he loved Elvis, they laughed. That's old people music, one boy said. Why don't you sing something cool, another teased. Even at a small local talent show, when Miguel sang an Elvis song, some people clapped politely, but others whispered that he should choose something more modern. The whispers hurt. For weeks, Miguel considered quitting. Maybe they were right. Maybe a kid like him didn't belong singing songs from the 1950s. Then something happened that changed everything. Lolo Ramon fell sick. The hospital bills were heavy for Miguel's family. His father worked long hours at a small repair shop, and his mother sold homemade snacks in the market. One evening, sitting beside his grandfather's hospital bed, Miguel sang softly, "Love Me Tender." Lolo's tired eyes opened, and a faint smile crossed his face. You have a gift, Lolo whispered. Don't hide it because others don't understand. A few months later, Lolo passed away. Miguel felt as if the music in his life had gone silent. But one day, while scrolling through videos on an old phone, Miguel saw clips from America's Got Talent. He watched ordinary people step onto a massive stage and transform their lives in minutes. He saw judges, bright lights, and thousands of strangers listening carefully. A small spark lit inside him. What if, he thought, I could sing for Lolo on a stage like that? The idea seemed impossible. They didn't have much money. Traveling from the Philippines to the United States was a dream far beyond their reach. But sometimes, dreams move mountains when hearts refuse to give up. Miguel started uploading short videos of himself singing Elvis songs online. At first, only a few people watched. Then dozens. Then hundreds. One video, where he sang If I Can Dream with tears in his eyes, caught attention. Comments flooded in from different countries. This kid sounds like Elvis. Go to AGT. You're amazing. A Filipino community organization noticed his talent and started a small fundraiser. Neighbors contributed what they could. Coins, small bills, prayers. It wasn't just about a show anymore. It was about a whole community believing in one boy. Months later, Miguel stood backstage at America's Got Talent. The stage felt enormous. The lights were blinding. His hands trembled slightly as he held the microphone. Across the stage sat the judges, including the famously hard-to-impress Simon Cowell. Simon was known for sharp criticism. He didn't smile easily. He didn't praise without reason. Miguel's heart pounded as Simon asked, "So, young man, what are you going to sing?" Miguel swallowed. "I'm going to sing an Elvis Presley song. This is for my grandfather." Some people in the audience murmured. A 12-year-old singing Elvis? It sounded risky. The music began. A simple guitar intro. Silence filled the auditorium. Then Miguel sang. The first note was soft but steady. Not an imitation. Not a cartoon version of Elvis. It was respectful, emotional, and real. His voice carried warmth beyond his years. As he moved into the chorus, something shifted in the room. The audience leaned forward. A few people placed hands over their hearts. Miguel closed his eyes, imagining Lolo sitting in the front row, nodding proudly. When he hit the high note near the end, it wasn't just technically perfect, it was filled with longing, love, and memory. You could hear a boy who had faced teasing, loss, and doubt, and who had chosen courage instead. The camera cut to the judges. One judge wiped away tears. And then there was Simon. At first, his face was serious, analytical. But as Miguel continued, Simon's expression softened. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in criticism, but in focus. And then, slowly, unmistakably, a smile spread across his face. Not a polite smile. A genuine one. The kind that says, "I didn't expect this, but I'm moved." The song ended. For a second, there was complete silence. Then the entire auditorium erupted. People stood up, clapping, cheering, shouting his name. Miguel opened his eyes, overwhelmed. He looked small on that massive stage, but in that moment, he felt 10 feet tall. Simon leaned forward. "Miguel," he said, pausing as the applause continued, "I've heard a lot of people try to sing Elvis. Most of them try too hard. But you didn't try to be Elvis. You were yourself. And that's why it worked." The crowd cheered again. Simon continued, "Your grandfather would be very proud." Miguel felt tears slide down his cheeks. He didn't try to hide them. When the votes came, it was for yes. But more than that, it was validation. It was proof that staying true to who you are matters more than fitting in. Back home in the Philippines, his family watched the broadcast together. His mother cried openly. His father, usually quiet and strong, wiped his eyes when he thought no one was looking. The entire neighborhood celebrated as if Miguel had already won. But the real victory wasn't the competition. It was the journey. Miguel had faced laughter and doubt. He had faced grief and financial struggle. He had stood on one of the biggest stages in the world and chosen authenticity over fear. In later rounds, he continued to perform, each time bringing a piece of Elvis's spirit and his own Filipino heart to the stage. He didn't just revive old songs, he reminded the world that music has no expiration date. Emotion never grows old. Years later, people would say that night was special because it felt like Elvis came back to life. But Miguel knew the truth. He wasn't bringing Elvis back. He was bringing himself forward. And that's the message I want you to carry with you today. You don't have to change your passion to fit someone else's expectations. You don't have to silence your unique voice because it sounds different. The very thing people laugh at today might be the reason they applaud you tomorrow. If a 12-year-old boy from a small town in the Philippines can stand on a global stage and move millions with a song older than his grandparents, imagine what you can do with your own gift. So if this story touched your heart, if Miguel's courage reminded you of your own dream, take a second right now. Like this video so more people can feel inspired. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that light a fire inside your soul. And share this with someone who needs a reminder that being different is not a weakness, it's a superpower. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice, one stage, and one fearless moment to make the world smile. What if I told you that a 12-year-old boy from a small village in the Philippines walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent, and for a few breathtaking minutes, the spirit of Elvis Presley filled the entire theater again? Not an impression. Not karaoke. But something so real, so emotional, that even Simon Cowell, known for his cold honesty, couldn't hide his smile. Stay with me until the very end, because this story isn't just about music. It's about loss, courage, and the kind of dream that refuses to die. And if you believe in chasing impossible dreams, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard around the world. The boy's name was Daniel Cruz. He grew up in a small coastal Burundi where the ocean breeze carried the smell of salt and fish every morning. Their house was modest, wooden walls, a tin roof that rattled during heavy rain, and a tiny living room that held the most important object in Daniel's life, an old radio. That radio belonged to his grandfather. Every evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Daniel's grandfather would tune the dial carefully until a familiar voice echoed through the static. It was the voice of Elvis Presley. Deep, soulful, timeless. Listen closely, his grandfather would say. He doesn't just sing notes. He sings feelings. Daniel didn't understand it at first. But over time, he did. He learned that every pause in "Love Me Tender" meant something. Every powerful line in "If I Can Dream" carried pain and hope together. While other kids memorized rap lyrics, Daniel memorized Elvis's phrasing, breathing, and emotion. At school, it didn't make him popular. When classmates found out he loved Elvis, they laughed. That's grandpa music, they joked. Sing something from this century. Daniel would smile awkwardly and pretend it didn't bother him. But at night, lying under a mosquito net, he would wonder if they were right. Maybe he should stop. Maybe his dream was silly. Then everything changed. His grandfather became ill. Hospital visits replaced their evening music sessions. The radio sat silent at home. Daniel felt something breaking inside him. One afternoon, sitting beside the hospital bed, he softly sang "Can't Help Falling in Love." His voice trembled, but he sang anyway. His grandfather's eyes opened slowly. A weak smile appeared. "Don't stop singing," he whispered. "Promise me." It was the last clear sentence Daniel ever heard from him. When his grandfather passed away, the house felt emptier than ever. The radio no longer played. The evenings were quiet. But the promise echoed loudly in Daniel's heart. One night, while watching clips online, Daniel discovered America's Got Talent. He saw people from different backgrounds step onto a giant stage and transform their lives in minutes. He watched nervous contestants turn into stars. He watched judges react with shock and emotion. An impossible thought entered his mind. What if I sang for Lolo there? The idea felt ridiculous. They didn't have much money. Traveling from the Philippines to America seemed like a fantasy. But Daniel began recording himself singing Elvis songs using his mother's old phone. He uploaded them quietly. At first, only relatives watched. Then strangers. Then thousands. One video of him singing "The Wonder of You" went viral in small online communities. Comments flooded in. "This kid has an old soul. He sounds like Elvis but still unique. He should audition for AGT." A Filipino cultural group noticed him and helped raise funds. Neighbors donated small amounts. Even his school organized a mini concert fundraiser. It wasn't just Daniel's dream anymore. It belonged to everyone who believed in him. Months later, Daniel stood backstage at America's Got Talent. The lights were brighter than he imagined. The stage felt enormous beneath his small frame. His palms were sweaty. His heart pounded so loudly he thought the microphones might pick it up. He walked out to the center of the stage. The judges sat before him, including the famously tough Simon Cowell. Simon looked at him curiously. "And what are you singing tonight?" Daniel swallowed. "An Elvis Presley song. For my grandfather." A soft murmur moved through the audience. A child singing Elvis? Risky. The music began. A simple instrumental intro floated across the theater. Silence followed. Daniel took a deep breath. Then he sang. The first note was pure and steady. Not forced. Not exaggerated. He wasn't copying Elvis's movements. He wasn't wearing a flashy costume. He stood there in a simple shirt, eyes closed, singing from somewhere deep inside. As the song continued, something shifted in the room. The audience stopped whispering. Judges leaned forward. Daniel's voice carried both youth and maturity, soft when it needed to be, powerful when the chorus demanded it. When he reached the emotional peak of the song, his voice cracked slightly, not from lack of skill, but from feeling. And somehow, that tiny imperfection made it perfect. The camera turned to Simon. At first, his face was neutral. Observing. Measuring. Then slowly, unexpectedly, his lips curved upward. It wasn't a sarcastic smile. It wasn't polite. It was genuine. You could see it in his eyes, he was moved. The final note hung in the air like a prayer. Silence. Then the entire auditorium exploded with applause. People jumped to their feet. Some wiped tears. Daniel opened his eyes, overwhelmed by the roar of thousands of strangers cheering for him. Simon leaned toward his microphone. You know, he began, waiting for the applause to settle, I've heard many people try to sing Elvis. Most of them try too hard to be him. But you didn't try to be Elvis. You were you. And that's what made it special. The audience cheered again. Simon continued, there's something very sincere about you. And I think your grandfather would be incredibly proud right now. Daniel couldn't stop the tears. He didn't want to. 4 yes followed. Back home, his family watched on a small television. His mother cried openly. His father covered his face, pretending he wasn't emotional. Neighbors gathered outside, clapping and celebrating as if Daniel had already won the entire competition. But the real victory wasn't the yes votes. It was that Daniel had stayed true to himself. He had faced teasing. He had faced doubt. He had faced grief. And instead of changing who he was, he chose to stand on one of the biggest stages in the world and sing the music he loved. As the competition went on, Daniel continued to honor Elvis, not by copying him, but by carrying his emotional honesty forward. And every time he performed, that same smile from Simon returned. Years from now, people might say that for one night, Elvis Presley came back to life on America's Got Talent. But the truth is, a young Filipino boy found his own voice, and in doing so, reminded the world that passion has no age, no trend, and no expiration date. So if you're holding on to a dream that feels outdated, impossible, or misunderstood, remember Daniel. Remember that courage doesn't mean being fearless. It means stepping forward even when your knees are shaking. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video so more dreamers can see it. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring journeys that prove ordinary people can create extraordinary moments. And share this with someone who needs a reminder today, your uniqueness is your power. Because sometimes, all it takes is one song, one stage, and one fearless heart to make even the toughest judge smile. Before you scroll away, let me ask you something. What if the next time you hear an Elvis Presley song, it's not coming from an old record or a tribute artist in Las Vegas, but from a 13-year-old Filipino boy standing under the bright lights of America's Got Talent, so powerful, so emotional? That Simon Cowell doesn't just nod, he smiles in complete disbelief? Stay with me, because this story will remind you why dreams don't have an expiration date. And if stories like this move you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a moment that could inspire your own journey. His name was Rafael Raf Mendoza. He grew up in a crowded neighborhood in Quezon City, Philippines, where jeepneys roared past narrow streets and children played basketball using a bent metal ring nailed to a wooden post. Raf wasn't the tallest kid on the court. He wasn't the fastest either. But he had something different, an old soul wrapped inside a young boy's heart. Every Sunday afternoon, while other kids watched cartoons, Raf sat beside his father in their small living room. His father, a former lounge singer who had given up his music career to work overseas as a mechanic, kept a small collection of old CDs. The most worn-out one was from Elvis Presley. When the first notes of Bridge Over Troubled Water played, Raph would close his eyes and listen like it was a sacred ritual. Music is not about showing off, his father would say. It's about telling the truth. Raph absorbed every word. At school, however, telling that truth wasn't easy. When classmates asked him what kind of music he liked, he hesitated. The moment he said Elvis, the teasing started. "Are you 70 years old?" one boy laughed. "Sing something modern," another shouted. Raph laughed along, pretending it didn't hurt. But inside, he felt small. He wondered if maybe loving old music made him strange. One evening, everything changed. His father announced he had to leave again for another 2-year overseas contract. Money was tight. Raph's mother worked double shifts at a local eatery, and even then, bills piled up. The night before his father left, they sat together one last time listening to Elvis. "Promise me something," his father said quietly. "No matter what people say, you keep singing." Raph nodded, though his throat felt tight. After his father left, the house felt emptier. Raph started singing more, not to impress anyone, but to feel closer to home. He began posting short clips online, singing Elvis songs in their tiny kitchen while pots and pans hung behind him. At first, only relatives watched. Then strangers began sharing. One particular video, where Raph sang "If I Can Dream" with tears in his eyes, exploded online. People commented from different countries. "This kid gave me chills. He doesn't copy Elvis, he feels it. He should audition for America's Got Talent." America felt like another planet. But when Raph received an email inviting him to audition for America's Got Talent, his hands trembled so hard he almost dropped the phone. The journey wasn't easy. Fundraisers were organized. Neighbors contributed what they could. His school principal allowed him to perform at a charity event to raise travel money. The whole community began to believe in the skinny boy with the powerful voice. Finally, audition day arrived. Raph stood backstage in a simple white shirt, black pants, and worn leather shoes. He wasn't dressed like Elvis. No flashy jumpsuit. No dramatic hair. Just himself. When his name was called, he walked onto the enormous stage. The audience clapped politely. The judges looked curious. Among them sat Simon Cowell, known for being brutally honest. Simon leaned forward. "So, Raphael, why America's Got Talent?" Raph took a deep breath. "Because I want to make my father proud. And I want to show that old music can still touch young hearts." "And what will you sing?" "An Elvis Presley song." A few raised eyebrows appeared in the crowd. The music began softly. Raph closed his eyes. The first note left his lips, smooth and steady. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was controlled, emotional, honest. The kind of voice that makes you stop scrolling. The kind that demands attention without shouting. As he moved into the chorus, his confidence grew. His voice carried depth far beyond his age. He didn't mimic Elvis's accent. He didn't exaggerate his style. He simply delivered the song with sincerity. Halfway through, the camera showed Simon. At first, Simon's expression was neutral, calculating, as always. Then something shifted. His posture relaxed. His eyebrows lifted slightly. And slowly, a smile appeared. Not forced. Not sarcastic. A real smile of surprise and admiration. By the final chorus, the audience was already on their feet. Raph's voice soared, powerful yet controlled, ending the song with a note that hung in the air like a promise. Silence. 1 second. 2. Then the theater erupted. Cheers. Standing ovation. People wiping tears. Raph opened his eyes, overwhelmed. For a moment, he looked like a little boy again, unsure of what just happened. Simon spoke first. You know, Raphael, he began, waiting for quiet, when you said you were singing Elvis, I was worried. Because it's been done many times. But what you did tonight was different. The audience leaned in. You didn't try to be Elvis. You made the song your own. And that, Simon paused, smiling again, is why this worked. The crowd roared. Another judge added, you brought something pure to this stage. For yes. Raph covered his face as tears streamed down. He whispered, thank you, Dad, under his breath. Back in the Philippines, his mother and neighbors watched from a small TV inside the eatery where she worked. Customers stopped eating just to watch. When Simon smiled on screen, everyone screamed in excitement. But the biggest moment came weeks later. Raph's father, watching from overseas during his break, saw the performance replayed online. He sat alone in a small dorm room, tears falling silently as his son's voice filled the screen. In that moment, distance didn't matter anymore. Raph continued in the competition, growing stronger with each round. But even if he had gone home the next day, he had already won something bigger than a trophy. He proved that authenticity beats imitation. He proved that passion has no generation. He proved that you don't need to change who you are to fit the world will eventually adjust to you. Years from now, people might remember that night as the time a Filipino kid revived Elvis Presley on America's Got Talent. They might remember Simon Cowell's unexpected smile. But Raph will remember it differently. He'll remember standing on that stage, heart pounding, choosing courage over fear. And that's what I want you to remember too. If you've ever been told your dream is outdated, unrealistic, or strange, don't shrink. Don't silence your voice. The very thing that makes you different is what makes you unforgettable. If this story inspired you even a little, take a moment right now, like this video so more people can feel this message. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful journeys that prove ordinary people can create extraordinary impact. And share this with someone who needs a reminder that their voice matters. Because sometimes, all it takes is one brave step, one heartfelt song, and one unexpected smile from Simon Cowell to change everything. Stop for a moment and imagine this: the lights of America's Got Talent dim, the audience quiets, and a small boy from the Philippines walks onto the stage. He looks nervous. Too young. Too simple. Simon Cowell glances down at his notes, probably expecting another average audition. But 3 minutes later, the entire theater is on its feet, and Simon is smiling in pure disbelief. What happened in those 3 minutes didn't just impress the judges, it revived a legend. Stay with me until the end of this story, because it's not just about music. It's about faith, sacrifice, and a promise that refused to be broken. And if you believe dreams deserve a fighting chance, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories that remind the world what's possible. The boy's name was Andres Villanueva. He was 11 years old, the youngest of 3 siblings, living in a small fishing town in Cebu. Their house stood on wooden stilts near the shore. When the tide rose, water touched the bottom steps of their home. When storms came, the wind howled through the thin walls. Life wasn't easy. His mother worked long hours sewing clothes for neighbors. His father had once dreamed of being a singer but gave it up to support the family as a fisherman. Every dawn, before the sky turned orange, his father would push his small boat into the sea. But inside their humble home was something powerful: music. One night during a power outage, with only candles lighting the room, his father began singing softly to pass the time. The song was by Elvis Presley. His voice wasn't perfect, but it was full of emotion. Andres listened closely, his young eyes reflecting the candlelight. "Why do you like his songs so much?" Andres asked. His father smiled. "Because Elvis sang like he meant every word. He sang like he had something to prove." From that night on, Andres was hooked. While other kids practiced pop songs, Andres practiced Elvis. He studied old performances on a borrowed phone. He watched how Elvis stood still sometimes, letting the emotion carry the song instead of flashy moves. But loving Elvis at 11 wasn't exactly cool. At school, when Andres performed at a talent show, some kids laughed. Sing something new, they shouted. A few teachers politely clapped but suggested he choose modern songs next time. Andres smiled, but the words stung. Then, everything changed when his father was injured during a storm at sea. A sudden wave hit his boat, and he returned home with a bee. Before you skip this story, let me ask you something. What if the king of rock and roll didn't return as a legend in a glittering jumpsuit, but as a 12-year-old Filipino boy with shaking hands, worn-out shoes, and a promise in his heart? And what if that boy walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent and sang so honestly that even Simon Cowell, yes, the Simon Cowell, couldn't stop himself from smiling? Stay with me until the very end, because this isn't just about a performance. It's about sacrifice, family, and a dream that refused to fade. And if stories like this move you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another unforgettable journey. His name was Marco Reyes. He grew up in a crowded neighborhood in Manila where tricycles filled the streets and neighbors knew each other by name. Marco's world was small: 2 rooms, 5 family members, and a roof that leaked during monsoon season. But inside that tiny home lived something bigger than the city itself: music. Marco's grandmother, Lola Carmen, had been a singer in her youth. She never became famous, but she carried her love for music like treasure. Every afternoon, she would sit beside a dusty old cassette player and play songs by Elvis Presley. She said his voice made her feel brave when life felt heavy. Marco would sit at her feet, listening carefully. "Why Elvis?" he once asked. "Because he sang with courage," she replied. "And courage is louder than fear." Marco remembered those words. At school, Marco was shy. He avoided attention. When classmates talked about trending artists, he stayed quiet. One day, during a music class, the teacher asked him to sing. Nervously, he chose an Elvis song. Some students laughed softly. Others looked confused. "That's old," someone whispered. That afternoon, Marco ran home embarrassed. He told his grandmother he didn't want to sing anymore. She held his face gently. "If they don't understand it now, sing it so well they have no choice but to listen." Months later, Lola Carmen became ill. Hospital visits replaced their music afternoons. Marco sang to her softly while machines beeped in the background. One evening, as he sang "Can't Help Falling in Love," she squeezed his hand weakly. "Promise me you'll sing on a big stage one day," she whispered. He promised. When she passed away, the house felt silent in a way Marco had never experienced. The cassette player remained untouched. But the promise echoed in his heart louder than any music. One night, Marco discovered clips from America's Got Talent online. He saw ordinary people step into extraordinary moments. He saw dreams being judged and sometimes celebrated. An idea formed. Wild. Impossible. What if I sing for Lola there? He began uploading videos of himself singing Elvis songs in their small living room. The lighting was poor. The sound quality wasn't perfect. But the emotion was real. Slowly, the views grew. Comments poured in. "This kid has soul. He sings like he's lived 100 lives. AGT needs to see this." A Filipino community group noticed him and helped him audition. After months of waiting, Marco received the email. He was invited to perform on America's Got Talent. The day he stepped onto that stage, the lights felt blinding. The audience seemed endless. His heart pounded so loudly he thought everyone could hear it. Among the judges sat Simon Cowell, known worldwide for his sharp honesty. Simon looked at him thoughtfully. "You're very young. What are you going to sing?" "An Elvis Presley song," Marco answered softly. "It's for my grandmother." There was a ripple through the audience. A child singing Elvis? Risky choice. The music began. Marco closed his eyes. The first note came out steady, warm, and pure. Not an imitation. Not exaggerated. Just honest. As he sang, something shifted in the room. The audience leaned in. His voice carried both innocence and depth, like a child who had learned too early about love and loss. By the chorus, the theater was silent. Every word felt personal. The camera moved to Simon. At first, his expression was neutral. Evaluating. Then his eyebrows lifted slightly. Then, slowly, a smile. A real one. The kind that happens when someone surprises you in the best way possible. Marco reached the final note and held it, not to impress, but to express. When he finished, silence hung for a heartbeat. Then the crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Marco opened his eyes, overwhelmed. Tears blurred his vision. Simon leaned forward. You know, he began, waiting for the applause to calm. When someone your age chooses Elvis, it usually doesn't work. But you didn't try to copy him. You made it sincere. And that's why it was brilliant. The audience cheered again. Another judge added, you have something rare. Heart. For yes. Back in Manila, Marco's family and neighbors gathered around a small television. When Simon smiled on screen, they screamed with joy. His mother cried openly. His father stood silently, pride written across his face. Marco didn't just revive Elvis that night. He revived a promise. He revived courage. He showed the world that old songs can carry new dreams. As the competition continued, Marco grew stronger with each performance. But whether he won the trophy or not wasn't the point. He had already achieved something greater. He proved that staying true to who you are is more powerful than chasing trends. Years later, people might say that on one magical night, Elvis Presley's spirit returned to the AGT stage. They might remember Simon Cowell's unforgettable smile. But Marco would remember something else. A small living room. A dusty cassette player. A grandmother's whispered promise. And the moment he chose bravery over doubt. So if you're holding on to a dream that feels different, outdated, misunderstood, don't let it go. The world doesn't need more copies. It needs authenticity. If this story touched your heart, like this video so more dreamers can find it. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring journeys that prove no dream is too old and no stage is too big. And share this with someone who needs a reminder that courage, not popularity, creates legends. Because sometimes, all it takes is one fearless kid, one timeless song, and one unexpected smile from Simon Cowell, to show the world that true music and true dreams never die. Wait, before you move on, imagine this: the lights dim on the stage of America's Got Talent, the crowd is restless, and a small Filipino boy walks out, barely tall enough for the microphone stand. Some people smile politely. Some expect something cute. Simon Cowell folds his arms, ready to judge. Then the music begins, and within seconds, the entire room changes. By the end of the performance, Simon isn't criticizing. He isn't analyzing. He's smiling genuinely, proudly, like he just witnessed something unforgettable. What happened that night didn't just bring back a legend. It proved that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. Stay until the end of this story, because this one carries a message you might need today. And if you believe in impossible dreams, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because your support keeps these inspiring stories alive. The boy's name was Nico Alvarez. He was 12 years old, born and raised in Davao, Philippines. His family didn't have much. His mother worked as a housekeeper, and his father drove a small delivery truck. They lived in a two-room apartment above a repair shop, where the smell of engine oil mixed with the scent of home-cooked rice every evening. But inside that small apartment lived a big dream. Nico's connection to music began with his uncle, who used to perform in small local bars before life forced him to quit. One night, during a family gathering, his uncle played a song by Elvis Presley. Nico had never heard a voice like that before: strong, emotional, commanding. Why does he sound so different? Nico asked. Because he sings like he means it, his uncle replied. That's the secret. From that moment, Nico became obsessed. While other kids listened to trending hits, Nico searched for old Elvis performances. He practiced in front of a cracked mirror, not copying the dance moves, but studying the emotion in the eyes. At school, he kept this passion quiet. When classmates asked about his favorite music, he shrugged. He didn't want to be laughed at. But one day, during a school event, the microphone malfunctioned for a performer. The teacher asked if anyone else could fill the time. Nico raised his hand. Nervously, he began singing "Can't Help Falling in Love." At first, students giggled. But as he reached the chorus, the laughter faded. By the end, even the teachers were stunned. Still, applause at school didn't solve real-life problems. A year later, Nico's father lost his job when the delivery company shut down. Bills piled up. Tension filled the apartment. Nico overheard late-night conversations about rent and food. He felt helpless. One evening, he told his mother, "Maybe I can help. Maybe I can sing somewhere." She smiled gently but didn't want him to feel pressure. "Your job is to study," she said. But Nico couldn't ignore the fire inside him. He began posting videos online, singing Elvis songs from their small balcony with city noise in the background. One particular video, where he sang "If I Can Dream" with raw emotion, went viral in a local online community. People shared it with captions like, "This kid feels every word." Soon, someone suggested he audition for America's Got Talent. It sounded impossible. But sometimes impossible doors open quietly. After months of submissions and waiting, Nico received confirmation he would audition. The day he stepped onto the AGT stage, he felt tiny. The theater was massive. The lights were blinding. His heart pounded so loudly he thought the audience could hear it. The judges introduced themselves, including the fama.